If I told you that everything in your life, your body, your mind, your habits, your emotions, your relationships, your future could be transformed in 6 months, would you believe me? 6 months. 180 days. It's not magic. It's biology. It's physics. It's neurochemistry. And above all, it's discipline grounded in purpose. You are not fixed. Your brain is not a finished product. Every thought you choose, every behavior you repeat, every morning you rise with intention, you're literally rewiring the electrical and chemical systems that define how you see the world, the air, and how the world responds to you. This is not about hype. This is about neuroplasticity, the truth that your brain is always changing. The only question is, are you changing it intentionally or passively? If you wake up every day for 6 months and expose your eyes to sunlight within the first hour of rising, if you anchor your days in deep focus, movement, and rest, if you begin to attach your dopamine not to the end result, but to the process, to the climb, to the sweat, to the silence, you will witness transformation. This process will not feel like a motivational high. It will feel like discipline. It will feel like sacrifice. It will feel like breaking old patterns that you once thought were part of your identity. They're not. They're just habits coded into your nervous system by repetition, not by truth. In these 6 months, you will face resistance. You will feel discomfort. That's not a sign to stop. It's a signal that your biology is shifting. Your brain is pruning what no longer serves you and wiring itself for a new version of you, one that can hold more power, more clarity, and more peace. You don't need to have it all figured out. You need a daily system. You need a routine that honors your biology. You need a reason stronger than your excuses. And above all, you need to start today because the clock will tick either way. 6 months from now, your future self is going to look back and say one of two things. Well, I'm glad I did, or I wish I had. This is the science of decision. This is the spirituality of discipline. This is the divine truth. You are not limited by your past. You are designed to adapt. Your brain, your body, your soul are built for growth. Neuroplasticity is one of the most powerful and hopeful concepts in neuroscience. It refers to the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections throughout life. Contrary to old beliefs that the brain becomes hardwired after a certain age, modern science has proven that the brain remains malleable well into adulthood and even into old age. This means that with deliberate effort, repeated behaviors, focused attention, and the right environmental inputs, we can change the way our brain functions at both the structural and chemical levels. This process is not abstract or metaphorical. It is biological. It is biological. Neurons that fire together wire together. Every time you repeat a behavior, a thought, a reaction, or a habit, you are strengthening the synaptic connections between neurons. These pathways become more efficient, faster, and more automatic over time. This is how habits are formed. But the same mechanism also means that if you stop engaging with certain patterns, negative thoughts, harmful habits, unproductive emotional reactions, those neural pathways can weaken. Synaptic pruning, a natural process where unused neural connections fade away, allows room for more adaptive behaviors to take root. What does this mean in practical terms? It means that your anxiety, your procrastination, your addictions, your self-doubt, they are not fixed traits. They are patterns encoded into your brain by repetition and reinforcement. And anything that was wired in can be rewired out. The same brain that learned to panic can learn to remain calm. The same brain that learned to avoid hard things can be trained to pursue them. You are not stuck with the mind you have. You are actively shaping it with everything you do and don't do. However, neuroplasticity doesn't come automatically just because the brain is capable of change. It requires attention, intention, and effort. Focused mental engagement is critical for rewiring the brain. You have to be deeply present with what you are learning or practicing. Passive exposure won't cut it. For example, if you want to overcome social anxiety, you need to repeatedly expose yourself to social situations while managing your physiological state. Each time you succeed, even in a small way, your brain logs that experience and begins to reshape its internal model of the world. Over time, confidence becomes easier, not because you're faking it, but because your brain has built the neural circuitry that supports it. This is also why consistency matters more than intensity. The brain changes more through daily repeated efforts than from occasional heroic bursts. 10 minutes of focused journaling or meditation every day will yield more rewiring than a single 2-hour session once a week. This is how neural pathways are laid down, like walking a trail through tall grass. The more you walk it, the clearer the path becomes. Eventually, what once required immense effort becomes your new default. Importantly, the emotional state you are in when practicing a behavior influences how strongly the brain encodes it. Dopamine, the molecule of motivation and reward, plays a crucial role in locking in new neural circuits. When you associate growth with meaning and purpose, and you feel a sense of reward in the process, not just the outcome, you accelerate plasticity. This is why it's vital to find joy, even in discomfort. Celebrate the work, not just the wins. And I know neuroplasticity also explains why changing your environment can be so powerful. Your surroundings provide cues and triggers that activate certain brain networks. By altering your environment, whether by changing your physical space, your digital inputs, or the people you surround yourself with, you reduce friction for new behaviors and reduce the activation of old, undesired pathways. You are quite literally creating a new mental and emotional landscape. Every thought you think and every action you take is either reinforcing an old pathway or building a new one. And though this may sound daunting, it's actually liberating. It means that transformation is possible, not overnight, not without effort, but without question. The brain you have today does not have to be the brain you live with tomorrow. The first 90 days of any transformation are not just the beginning, they are the foundation that determines whether change takes root or fades into memory. During this window, the brain and body are most responsive to new behaviors, new inputs, and new intentions. It is a period of heightened neuroplasticity, physiological adaptation, and identity recalibration. If approached with structure, consistency, and purpose, the first 90 days can recalibrate your entire trajectory. In the early stages of change, your brain is monitoring what matters. It is assessing whether the new behavior is something worth allocating resources toward. The nervous system is efficient. It doesn't like to waste energy on things that are perceived as temporary. That means if you approach the process half-heartedly, inconsistently, or with uncertainty, your brain will respond accordingly. It won't invest in long-term rewiring. But when you engage daily with intensity and structure, the brain begins to signal. This matters. Reinforce this. The first 90 days are where the internal resistance is highest. Your old habits, well-rehearsed and biologically ingrained, will push back. The gravitational pull of comfort and familiarity will attempt to drag you into your previous state. This is not a sign that you're failing. It's a sign that the system is responding to change. And your task is not to eliminate that resistance, but to outlast it. Every time you choose to follow through despite friction, you are weakening the old neural circuits and strengthening new ones. Over time, the energy required to maintain the new behavior decreases. What once felt like effort becomes a new normal. Momentum is critical during these early days. One of the most important things you can do is eliminate unnecessary variability. Inconsistent behavior sends mixed signals to the nervous system. If you work out for 2 days, skip 3, then go hard for 1 day, the brain struggles to decide whether this new pattern is stable. But if you commit to a consistent routine, even if the intensity is low, the brain begins to trust it. Regularity, not intensity, is the foundation of change. This is how you train the nervous system to expect, support, and eventually crave the new habit. The first 90 days are also when your internal dialogue is most vulnerable. You are building not just routines, but a new narrative about who you are. If you constantly question your progress, compare yourself to others, or criticize every misstep, you are introducing doubt into a system that needs clarity. This is the season where you must speak to yourself with precision and discipline, not delusion, not false positivity, but grounded self-leadership. Tell yourself the truth, that you are building something, that setbacks are part of the process, and that effort compounds. Physiologically, your body is also learning. Your endocrine system, your sleep cycles, your digestive rhythm, your hormonal balance, they all adapt to your behavior. When you shift your sleep patterns, your body clock or circadian rhythm begins to adjust. When you train regularly, the neuromuscular system becomes more efficient. When you change your nutrition, your metabolism begins to recalibrate. These aren't just surface level shifts They are deep biological reorganizations, but they require consistency. If you keep starting and stopping, you never allow the body to settle into a new equilibrium. The first 90 days are not about perfection. They are about anchoring new defaults. You're not trying to create short-term results. You're trying to establish a system that the body and brain begin to recognize as your new baseline. It's like pouring concrete. In the beginning, it's malleable, wet, and easy to shape. But it requires time, pressure, and protection from disruption to solidify. After 90 days, what was once a fragile intention begins to harden into structure, something you can build on. When you show up every day for 90 days with intention, you create a psychological contract with yourself. You begin to believe not just that change is possible, but that it's inevitable. You shift from someone trying to change to someone who has already begun to live the change. Dopamine is not just a pleasure chemical, it's the molecule of motivation, drive, and pursuit. It's the neurochemical that tells the brain, this is worth moving toward. When people think of transformation, they often focus on discipline or grit. And while those matter, it's dopamine that makes effort sustainable. Without it, change becomes exhausting. With it, challenge becomes energizing. The key is not just in having dopamine, but in learning how to regulate and direct it toward meaningful goals. In the early stages of transformation, dopamine acts like a compass. It helps assign value to specific actions and rewards. The brain uses this system to prioritize what to focus on, what to repeat, and what to ignore. When dopamine is released in response to a behavior, the brain logs that behavior as important. It marks it as something that should be reinforced. This is how habits, both good and bad, get wired into the nervous system. If you're trying to build a new routine, the release of dopamine during or after the behavior increases the likelihood that you'll want to repeat it. This is why the early emotional experience matters so much. However, there's a trap in chasing dopamine only from results. If your brain only experiences a spike in dopamine when you see external proof of progress, like a number on the scale, a paycheck, or praise from others, then your motivation becomes dependent on things you can't fully control. That model is fragile, but when you learn to link dopamine to the process itself, to the act of showing up, to the discipline of execution, to the pursuit of improvement, you create a durable source of fuel. This is the difference between burnout and resilience. You can train your brain to release dopamine for effort. One of the most powerful practices is to acknowledge your progress in real time. When you complete a workout, check off a task, or follow through on a promise to yourself, take a moment to mentally reward that action. Not with external validation, but with a clear internal signal that mattered. That was a win. This teaches the brain to associate action, not just outcomes, with meaning. Over time, the pursuit becomes its own reward. Importantly, the dopamine system is not infinite. It operates on balance. Every time there's a spike, there's a subsequent drop. If you constantly stimulate dopamine with external rewards, scrolling, snacking substances, you deplete the system's sensitivity. The baseline drops, and what once motivated you now feels dull. This is why people lose excitement for goals they once loved. To keep dopamine working for you, you have to protect its rhythm. That means delaying gratification, avoiding overstimulation, and respecting the natural highs that come from challenge, not shortcuts. Dopamine is also tied to anticipation, and the anticipation. The expectation of a reward often triggers more dopamine than the reward itself. You can use this to your advantage. By setting clear goals and visualizing the effort you will put in to achieve them, you begin to generate dopamine even before the work begins. That anticipation builds energy. It moves you toward action. The brain is designed to seek. When you give it a direction and that direction has personal meaning, you activate a powerful neurochemical engine. Your relationship with dopamine determines whether transformation becomes a struggle or a sustainable pursuit. When you learn to generate it from growth, from effort, from alignment with purpose, you create a self-reinforcing system. Each action fuels the next. Motivation becomes less about waiting to feel ready and more about understanding the chemistry of readiness itself. Ultimately, transformation is not powered by occasional motivation, but by a consistent signal from within. This matters, and I'm moving toward it. Dopamine, when directed wisely, becomes that signal. It's not just a reward. It's the fire that keeps you in motion, even when progress is invisible and the path is uphill. When you master it, you're no longer driven by external outcomes, but by an internal engine that doesn't quit. Behavior is not separate from biology. It is biology in action. Every decision you make, every routine you follow, every thought you repeat creates a cascade of physiological responses that reach down to the cellular level. The way you breathe, sleep, eat, think, move, and even relate to others sends continuous signals to your nervous system, your endocrine system, and your immune system. These systems are always listening, always adapting. This means that your actions over time can shape your hormone levels, your gene expression, your brain structure, and the way your body responds to stress, energy, and emotion. The biology you live with today is in large part a reflection of your repeated behaviors. When you decide to wake up early and expose your eyes to sunlight first thing in the morning, you're not just checking off a habit. You're sending light through your retina that triggers your suprachiasmatic nucleus, your body's internal clock. This affects your cortisol rhythm, your alertness, your energy levels, and your sleep quality that night. That one act calibrates your circadian rhythm and begins a chain of biological events that influence everything from mood to metabolism. It's a simple behavior, but it rewires how your biology functions over the course of the day. The same principle applies to exercise. When you engage in physical activity, even a walk, you signal to your body that it needs to become more efficient. Muscles adapt, mitochondria increase, insulin sensitivity improves, and your brain releases BDNF, a molecule that supports learning and neuroplasticity. Over time, movement doesn't just improve your fitness. It reshapes your biochemistry. It changes the way your brain processes emotion, the way your cells produce energy, and the way your body deals with inflammation and aging. Mindset, too, is behavior. When you consistently shift your internal dialogue, when you replace self-criticism with observation and reaction with reflection, you influence your stress hormones. Chronic negative thought patterns are associated with elevated cortisol, increased inflammation, and suppressed immune function. But choosing to approach challenges with curiosity instead of fear can change your hormonal response. This doesn't mean you won't feel stress, but it does mean you can train your system to recover faster. Over time, the body responds to your mental environment the same way it responds to the physical one. Nutrition is another form of behavior that alters biology with remarkable speed. The foods you choose communicate directly with your microbiome, your blood sugar regulation systems, and even your DNA. Nutrients activate or silence genes, a process called epigenetics. This means that you are constantly shaping your biological expression through what you consume. A single high sugar meal can create measurable changes in insulin and inflammation within hours, while consistent whole food nutrition can downregulate disease pathways and upregulate repair processes over weeks and months. Sleep behaviors, often overlooked, might be the most foundational of all. When you protect your sleep by keeping a consistent schedule, avoiding screens late at night, and winding down with intention, you regulate melatonin, growth hormone, and other systems involved in cellular repair and memory consolidation. But when you sacrifice sleep, even occasionally, your decision-making, emotional regulation, and immune resilience decline. In this way, your bedtime is not a lifestyle choice. It's a biological intervention. All of this points to a profound truth. You are not passively living inside a fixed body governed by unchangeable rules. You are participating in a dynamic system that responds to your choices every single day. And the more consistent your actions, more your biology adapts to support those behaviors automatically. The body begins to match the identity you reinforce through repetition. You start to crave the things that once felt difficult. You begin to operate from a new baseline, not because you force change, but because you trained your systems to expect and support it. When you change your behavior with intention, your biology follows. What starts as effort becomes identity. What begins as strategy becomes chemistry. This is not a theory, it's how the human body works. Transformation doesn't begin in your cells, it begins in your actions. The body simply responds to what you consistently do. Discomfort is not just a nuisance to be avoided. It is a direct signal from your nervous system that something important is happening. It is a biochemical and physiological cue that your body and brain are being pushed beyond their current baseline, and that adaptation is being triggered. While most people interpret discomfort as a sign to stop, turn back, or escape, the truth is that it often indicates that you are entering the precise territory where growth occurs. The key is not to eliminate discomfort, but to learn how to interpret and respond to it in a way that leverages its power. When you engage in a difficult task, whether it's a challenging workout, a deep work session, an uncomfortable conversation, or a new habit your system isn't used to, your brain releases a mix of stress-related neurochemicals, including norepinephrine, epinephrine, and sometimes cortisol. These chemicals create a sense of agitation or unease, which we subjectively experience as discomfort. But this discomfort isn't random or negative. It is a byproduct of heightened alertness and focus. The brain is activating its resources to meet the demand you've placed on it, and in doing so, it begins to open the door for neuroplasticity and physiological change. This is particularly important in the early stages of habit formation or transformation. Discomfort is a sign that the brain is being asked to break out of its established wiring. Neurons that once fired in a habitual loop are being interrupted, and new neural connections are being formed. This process requires energy and effort. That feeling of resistance is not a flaw. It's your nervous system actively remodeling itself. If you pull back at the first sign of discomfort, you're teaching your brain that difficulty equals danger. But when you lean into it with awareness and control, you teach your system that effort equals progress. There's also a deeper biological intelligence at play. Discomfort drives dopamine. When you do something hard and stick with it, your brain rewards you afterward, not always with a hit of dopamine. This creates a loop. Effort followed by reward. Over time, this loop conditions you to associate growth with meaningful challenge. It reshapes your motivation system to crave the pursuit, not just the outcome. But this only works if you repeatedly step into that tension and give your brain a reason to adapt. Avoidance breaks the cycle. Engagement completes it. It's important to note that discomfort does not mean pain or injury. There is a clear difference between constructive strain and harmful overload. Discomfort means unfamiliarity, challenge, pressure, or stretching. It can be physical, like muscle fatigue, mental, like intense focus, or emotional, like facing fear or uncertainty. In all forms, it activates brain systems that are necessary for learning and adaptation. For example, the prefrontal cortex becomes more engaged under discomfort, leading to deeper processing, better memory consolidation, and more significant behavioral change. When discomfort is embraced, it becomes a training ground for resilience. You build the capacity to stay regulated under stress, to observe rather than react, to maintain effort when the reward isn't immediate. These traits are not just psychological, they're biochemical. You are literally training your stress response systems to operate with more precision, more control, and more flexibility. You are reprogramming your relationship with adversity. The people who grow the most are not those who avoid discomfort, but those who learn how to frame it. When you understand that discomfort is a sign that your system is engaging deeply, you begin to welcome it as feedback. It means you're doing the work that matters. You're no longer stuck in survival. You're entering transformation. The discomfort becomes your signal, your guidepost, your internal metric of where the edge is. And at that edge is where the real growth takes place. Sleep, light, and focus are not optional add-ons to a successful life. They are biological requirements. If you want to change your mind, your body, or your circumstances, these three systems form the foundation. They govern how your brain functions, how your hormones regulate, how your nervous system adapts, and how much energy you have to meet the demands of growth. You cannot willpower your way around them. You cannot out-hustle their absence. If these systems are misaligned, everything else, motivation, clarity, performance, resilience, will operate at a fraction of its potential. Sleep is not just rest, it is active repair. During deep sleep, your brain consolidates memories, your body clears out cellular waste, and your systems reset for the next day. Growth hormone peaks during sleep. Neural circuits are pruned and strengthened. Emotional regulation is restored. When sleep is compromised, you operate with impaired prefrontal cortex activity. the part of your brain responsible for decision-making, impulse control, and long-term planning. You become reactive, short-sighted, and vulnerable to stress. Even a small reduction in sleep quality can diminish your ability to learn, regulate emotions, and manage energy. So if you're trying to build new habits, overcome old patterns, or push into new territory, poor sleep will sabotage that process from the inside out. Light is your primary circadian signal. Your brain has a master clock located in the suprachiasmatic nucleus that governs nearly every biological rhythm in your body. This clock relies on light to stay in sync. When you get sunlight in your eyes within the first hour of waking, you send a powerful cue to your brain that it's time to be alert. This activates cortisol release at the right time, setting the tone for energy, focus, and metabolism. In contrast, artificial light late at night confuses this system, delaying melatonin production and disrupting your natural rhythm. This mismatch can lead to poor sleep, foggy mornings, low energy, and even mood instability. Light isn't just about seeing, it's about signaling. Your internal environment listens to the light you expose yourself to. Aligning with it gives you more clarity, more drive, and better physiological balance. Focus is not something you either have or don't have. It's something you train, and it is becoming more rare and more valuable. The ability to direct attention without distraction is one of the most powerful tools for transformation. Every time you resist a distraction and return to what matters, you are strengthening neural circuits responsible for sustained effort and goal-directed behavior. This is not abstract. Focus involves specific neuromodulators like acetylcholine and dopamine. When you're locked in, those chemicals reinforce the neural patterns being activated. That means what you focus on, you get better at. So if your attention is fragmented, scattered, and pulled by endless dopamine-triggering stimuli, scrolling, switching, multitasking, your brain adapts to that mode. You lose depth, you lose endurance. But when you train focus, your mind becomes a tool that works for you instead of against you. All three, sleep, light, and focus, are interlinked. Poor sleep leads to reduced focus. Lack of light disrupts sleep. Scattered attention creates stress that further impairs rest. But when you prioritize them as non-negotiables, everything changes. You begin to wake up with more clarity. You think more strategically. You make better decisions. You regulate emotion more effectively. And most importantly, you create the internal environment required for deep, lasting transformation. These are not luxuries. They are the biological prerequisites for change. Yay. Without them, you are working against your own system. With them, you unlock your full capacity to grow, learn, and lead yourself forward. Prioritize them, protect them, and everything else you build will be stronger because scientific discipline, structure, consistency, systems, measurable effort is essential for transformation. It provides the framework for behavior change and the biological recalibration of your mind and body. But when that discipline is rooted in something deeper, something beyond logic and data, it gains power. Spiritual discipline is that deeper root. It is the connection to meaning, purpose, and intention. It's not religious by necessity. It's the sense that your actions are not random, that your work has significance, and that your suffering has direction. When this spiritual foundation is present, scientific discipline is no longer just about self-optimization. It becomes a form of devotion, and that amplifies everything. Scientific methods can get you far. They help you structure your sleep, regulate dopamine, train focus, and shift behavior in ways that are biologically sound. But without a spiritual framework, these systems can become empty. You might go through the motions, track the metrics, follow the protocols, but burn out because there's no emotional or existential fuel behind it. Discipline without meaning can become mechanical. Over time, it collapses under its own weight. But when your discipline is anchored in something spiritual, when your effort is tied to identity, legacy, or service, it becomes sustainable. You're not just optimizing, you're honoring something sacred. Spiritual discipline teaches consistency in the absence of immediate reward. And it builds the muscle of faith that what you're doing matters, even when the results are invisible. That mindset aligns perfectly with the scientific process of growth, which is nonlinear, delayed, and often invisible at first. You don't see neural pathways forming. You don't feel your hormones rebalancing or your circadian rhythm realigning. That requires trust, and trust is spiritual. It's the decision to believe in the unseen while you continue to show up. This belief system reinforces discipline. You begin to move with purpose, not pressure. When you incorporate spiritual discipline, daily moments of stillness, prayer, journaling, reflection, intentional silence, you train your nervous system to slow down, regulate, and reset. That directly impacts your biological systems. Breath slows, cortisol lowers, heart rate variability improves. Focus deepens. These are measurable effects, born from practices that are often dismissed as intangible. But neuroscience and physiology both validate what spiritual traditions have taught for centuries. The inner world shapes the outer. Clarity and strength begin internally. Spiritual discipline also develops resilience. It gives pain context. Scientific knowledge tells you that discomfort is part of growth. Spiritual discipline reminds you why the discomfort is worth enduring. It reframes obstacles as part of the path, not signs you fail. You're no longer doing hard things to prove something. You're doing hard things because it's part of your calling, part of your mission. That mindset makes you unstoppable because when you suffer for something bigger than yourself, you suffer well. You stay in the fight longer. You recover faster and you rise more focused than before. In a world obsessed with hacks, metrics, and efficiency, spiritual discipline reintroduces reverence. It reminds you that you are not a machine, but a human being with depth, spirit, and potential. That your transformation is not just about aesthetics or performance, but about becoming the version of yourself that you were created to be. Spiritual practices give you direction. Scientific practices give you structure. Together, they create momentum that is both grounded and guided. Both grounded and guided. When these two disciplines are aligned, you begin to feel it. Your daily routines become rituals. Your workouts become acts of worship. Your focus sessions become meditations. Your rest becomes sacred. You stop negotiating with yourself because your actions are no longer optional. They are expressions of purpose. In this state, discipline is no longer difficult. It becomes who you are. And that is when change becomes permanent. Change is not just about doing more. It's about becoming more. It's about becoming more. It's about aligning your biology, your habits, and your spirit with the vision of who you're called to be. Every system in your body is waiting for direction. Every thought, every breath, every step you take in alignment with that vision sends a message. We are moving forward now. 6 months is not a long time, but it is long enough to become unrecognizable to the person you once were. It is long enough to rewire your brain, renew your energy, rebuild your character, and realign with purpose. But only if you commit fully. Not halfway, not conditionally, but completely. If you want to change everything, give everything. Prioritize what matters. Respect the science. Honor your spirit. And most of all, trust the process. You don't need motivation. You need a reason. You don't need perfection. You need persistence. The discomfort you feel is not resistance. It's confirmation. It means you're on the edge of growth. Stay there. Keep going. 6 months from now, your mind will be sharper, your habits stronger, your body clearer, your spirit more grounded. But only if you begin now and refuse to stop. Refuse to stop. Transformation is not a miracle. It's a decision repeated daily. Make that decision again and again until it becomes who you are.